Welcome to BWI Live here on a Monday. It's the recruiting show. And I told you last week, I think it was, that the lull was about a week in recruiting. That's all it is. It's like part of February, maybe, and then about a week in May. Because yesterday, or this weekend, I should say, it was the Under Armour Regional Camp in Baltimore, which we had Blue White Illustrated representatives there. They're going to break it down for you today. Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz joining us in just 1 second. And then coming up this weekend, the Elite 11 is coming to State College. For those that don't know, that is the premier passing camp that goes throughout the country looking for the best quarterbacks to come and throw and compete. And Penn State is essentially hosting one here in State College. Going to be very exciting to see some of the top quarterbacks in the region and maybe from out of the region come to the Elite 11. We'll be getting into all of that today on the show, including your questions, your comments, your benedictions, your prayers and concerns, all that on the show today on BWI Live. Very excited for that, and as always, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off now. Please like the video and subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube so that we can keep this gravy train rolling, get you the information you want on a Monday on the recruiting show. Joined now by our experts, Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz of Blue White Illustrated. Guys, very busy weekend. Baltimore, how was it? Looked like the weather was beautiful this weekend for the camp.
So 2 years ago, we had this camp in Maryland, came away with a wicked sunburn. Last year, it was more windburn and frostbite mostly, and we're back on it with the sunburn this year. Ryan, I'm glad to see you covered up today because you were not yesterday. And buddy, you are.
I'm wearing long sleeves today, guys.
Like I was kind of struggling, but I kind of stood in the shadow of a goalpost for a half hour, an hour. I think that really helped me. You were red by the time we left yesterday. So man, all the best to you because I think you got the worst of that.
Xander Secrets.
Look, I should know by now to use sunscreen. Yeah,
we don't do the sun, so
I don't get it. Like my wife did the same thing. We were out doing yard work yesterday, and I was like, "Hey, you want to put on some sunscreen?" She's like, "No." She came in. She looked like an eggplant. She's purple. Like, where's your sunscreen, people? It's not that hard. Anyway, how was the camp, Ryan? How other than the sun? How was the camp?
Good turnout. I mean, there are certainly some guys missing. Jalen Harvey was a guy we were really hoping to see. But I would say, I don't know, Sean, about 24 or so quality prospects, guys, when you include 2026, 2025, plenty of names, from Xavier Gilliam, to DeAndre Cook. You had Zahir Mathis, of course, top prospect out of Imhotep Charter. I mean, there's a lot of guys we'll go over today, but good turnout. There's always a couple guys that we're really hoping to see, and then they don't end up showing. That's always a bit of a bummer. I know Harvey was one of them, and I'd have to look at the no-show list again, Sean. There was a couple others as well, but it's about what you expect, man. The majority of the region's top guys were there, and I always like kind of seeing the younger guys too, because I know the 2024 guys by now. It's those 2026 guys that we've heard about for the last couple of months now. They haven't seen in person. Good to see those guys up close.
So how do you want to you guys obviously were there. I was not. So how do you want to go through the listed names that you have here, and how do you want to break down the conversation today? I'll kind of like give it to you guys, and I'll sit back and just kind of jump in where I can. But you guys have all the information. You guys saw the players. You know the names. So how do you Ryan? How do you want to go through the list here?
I think we'll kind of just start with the standouts, right, Sean? I mean, I don't know. If you want me to roll through the 20+ names we were watching, we can do that. We're just listing a bunch of names. But, I think the place to start, if you want to talk about the quarterbacks, Michael Van Buren was there. Samaj Jones was there. Neither of whom I really think are going to end up at Penn State. Michael Van Buren, his already, said he's about to commit soon. Sean, you spoke with him. I mean, I'll throw it to you. Just, your thoughts on Van Buren and that whole situation.
Well, first off, from a performance standpoint, look good. I mean, he is what he is. He's a sub 6 foot quarterback, but he throws a really good ball, accurate, poised, a lot of really good things there. But that said, he's set to announce this Saturday now, and that's not good news for Penn State. So I would say with Van Buren, it's time. I think it's time to shift focus elsewhere. Ethan Grunkmeyer was on campus last week. I think that's a logical place to jump with that. I know we're kind of talking about the camp here, and he'll be at the Elite 11 in State College next weekend. Grunkmeyer will be, so we'll get a chance to watch him there. But Van Buren, a good, solid prospect. Like I said, he's very his toolbox is great. He's very talented. What he can do, a little limited physically, and you're going to expect that with a 5'11" quarterback. But
what about arm strength? That's one thing from film, like up close. What does he look like?
Yeah, he looks good. I mean, it was not a great group of quarterbacks. Maryland, for whatever reason, in that area, not tremendous in terms of quarterback output. Once in a while, a guy will pop up, but it's not an area where you see a ton of quarterbacks. So he was among the strongest in the group there. I know there were some other quarterbacks there that are probably not on Penn State's level, but there were some guys that I liked just watching here. Yeah, I would say it's a strong enough arm. Good, above average is what I was saying for arm strength. And then when you take the accuracy in there, he just looks like he's been doing it forever. I mean, it's one of the guys. He started as a freshman as a spot starter and came on and has developed a nice little career at St. Francis. There's upside and there's downside by taking a quarterback like that. And but it seems like that's going to be something that Oregon's going to have to deal with, not Penn State.
Ryan, what else you got? Who stood out to you?
Well, we want to talk about standouts. I'd have to go with DeAndre Cook. Sean, we've been talking about DeAndre a lot more, I think, over the past 5 days or so. Looks like he's going to take an official visit. I just thought O-line, D-line drills really performed well, held his own. I thought during, the certain little individual drills too, good hip bend, all those kind of things that you want to see from a player. Is he a potential, high 4-star or anything like that? I don't know if I go there, but I see a lot of upside in DeAndre and certainly a player that I think makes a lot of sense for Penn State. Size-wise, seemed to check out too. I mean, it was a little bit bigger than I thought he was, Sean. We have him at 6'3", 255, which I think was about accurate, right? I mean,
he's 6'4". Like he's absolutely size checked out, like in the good way, like in the fact that I think we've been listening in articles at 6'4", 250, or I have at least. And he's bigger than that 6'3". So he's got that frame. He's got a lot of that stuff. And you didn't see that from all those guys yesterday. And he's going to have to grow into it, no doubt. But got a chance to speak to him afterwards. And he was impressive in terms of, he's a smart kid. I think he's got the Duke visit set. He's got some academic schools in there. So he's got the ability to be that guy that is 6'4", going to be 295 pounds, going to be 300 pounds and move around pretty well. So I came away as a stock up guy on DeAndre Cook. I liked what we saw from him.
Was there a standout position group in terms of like the receivers looked really strong or the defensive linemen looked really strong? You said quarterbacks weren't great. Was there a group that you guys were evaluating and watching and you said, hey, there's a lot of guys here and would be a good sign for Penn State in the region, either, this year confirming some things you've seen or 2025, 26?
I would say, unfortunately, the running backs and linebackers were among the strongest groups, and that's terrible for a camp because there's only so much you can do. You feel bad for the linebackers who are out there chasing those running backs around. So I would say I would lean to that position group. There's some really good ones in there. Dylan Jones from Good Counsel was really, really good, I thought. He just had a lot of above average to top level guys at those two position groups. Chris Cole was there playing linebacker, who's a Penn State target. There's a bunch of familiar names if you go down the list when you sort these guys. I will say, going back to quarterback real quick, a guy I really like, Deshaun Purdy, is committed to Charlotte. He's, if we're going to play this game, he's better than Charlotte. So I don't know if he's Penn State good, but he was very good in there. And Samaj Jones, we kind of glossed over him. That's an interesting looking cat right there because you would think if you saw him, you'd think running back. Like he is built like a running back. He is pretty well jacked, and he throws a nice ball. He's about 5'10". I mean, he looks like he's built like a running back because he's sized like a running back, but he throws a nice ball as well. Not quite as accurate as Van Buren, but there's a lot to like in terms of a playmaker. I think West Virginia, it would be a good fit just based on what they've done traditionally with smaller quarterbacks. And I think that's probably where he will end up. But there's a lot to like with Samaj Jones. I think we probably have him a little bit high based on long-term projection. And on 3, we have him as a 4-star, an on 300 4-star prospect. But definitely could see like there's a skill set, and that's a shame. Like with Jones, with Van Buren, the skill set is there. These are two of the most quote unquote talented quarterbacks in the country, I think, but they're going to be limited on size and what they can do in the long-term potential. And that's unfortunate to say, but you also have to say it because it's flat out right there in front of your face.
I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but we mentioned Chris Cole earlier, and Ryan, I know he's somebody you've had your eye on. just in general of the looks like test, because you said at a camp like this,
Yeah.
hard to see what linebackers can do. What did you think of Cole, and what do you think of his prospects of that third linebacker spot in this class? Because there's a lot of guys vying for that position. Maybe there's a fourth, I don't know, but like, what did you think of his ability this weekend?
Love his length, ran really well. I mean, certainly the two things I thought, while watching, again, it's watching linebackers chase running backs, right? Which, usually linebackers are a little more zone coverage in actual games. So you take it with a grain of salt, but certainly was one of the best at keeping up with the Iverson Howards, the Bud Coombs, the Dylan Joneses of the world. It was certainly a good running back group, which by the way, we talk about running back and linebacker and how it's unfortunate for Penn State. Those are fortunate for the camp, but those are also Penn State's like two positions that they're pretty much good at, right? I mean, they need another linebacker, but running back, they're pretty much set at now. So it's that Sean and I were joking about that yesterday, but Chris Cole absolutely fits that outside linebacker that they're looking for. I think him and Elijah Newby are those two that certainly feel like they're rising up right now. Chris Jones, I feel like he was there as well, the Virginia linebacker. I feel like he's probably going to end up elsewhere. I think Florida's the team to beat there. We'll see. Maybe he'll get on campus, but I don't see a visit coming at the moment from Chris Jones. So Chris Cole, again, who's also from Virginia, Salem. Salem is right. Didn't Poindexter grow up in Lynchburg, which I believe they're all Roanoke, Lynchburg, Salem. I believe they're all like pretty close together.
Salem's down 81 toward Blacksburg. Yeah. So it's,
and I believe Lynchburg's pretty close. My point with that, he was saying like they're from the same area and they've been able to relate really well from that. Obviously, Manny Diaz is doing a lot of recruiting for Chris Cole as well. But I know just from talking to him, he said Poindexter, that relationship with Dex is really strong. He has 4 official visits. Penn State's one of them. The other 3 are Miami, Notre Dame, and Georgia, which are like, kind of funny to me, right? You got Notre Dame, Penn State, you got Georgia, Miami. They're 2 or 4 really different schools. 2 of them are, different than the other 2, I guess you'd say. So let's see where those line up after that. I mean, certainly looking like another July, August commitment. And Penn State should be in a good spot there. But yeah, length, really, really like this length. 6'3", 210 is absolutely legit. I love to see what he tested at. Those testing numbers won't come out for a few more days, but looked good to me.
We'll obviously be talking about Jamonte Waller here just a little bit in the show, not at this particular camp. But, Fitz, what did you think of the linebackers there? Is there anybody on outside of the guys that we've mentioned that stood out to you, or any additional thoughts you have there?
Not a big group. Of course, Cole was interesting. Aaron Childs is very good, I think. And he seems to have slimmed down. We talked about defensive end with him potentially because he is a bigger, thicker kid. I mean, this kid's lower body looks like a defensive end. His upper body looks like a linebacker. So I think he's probably ended up going to play at Michigan. So we're going to see what that's about in the next couple of years. Gabe Williams is an interesting one. Really athletic kid, really skinny. Like he's a linebacker. Some have talked to him or talked about an edge player with him, but if he's 200 pounds, I'd be surprised right now. Penn State had him up for a visit in April. We'll see if that's we'll see if that's a guy that they circle back around to during official visit season. He can move around pretty well. There was some other guys there. Brett Clatterball was there, 2025. He's got an offer from Penn State. He looks like a Mike linebacker, a wrestler. Like he's out there. Coverage was not his thing, but he's a big kid that can move pretty well. But it was a good group. And just looking at the running back group that they were going up against as I sort this list and make it legible for me. Iverson Howard, who's at Jalen Harvey's school at Quince Orchard, is definitely a guy that Penn State fans keep tabs on. He's a good one. Bud Coombs at DeMatha has been up a bunch. Couple of 26 kids, Savion Hyder and Deontay Sheffy from State College was there yesterday. He looked like he fit in. Like he looked really good in terms of not just accounting for which class he is, but he looked really good. Messiah Mickens was there. Daniel Coles is in the 2024 class. Had this talk with some other guys. Penn State pretty well set in the 2024 class, but Daniel Coles is a good-looking athlete. I'm not sure he's a running back long-term, but he's good. And then Peyton Lewis, I thought looked really good in drills, but he's set to come off the board, I think, before official visit season, and Penn State's got 2 running backs. So 2 plus 2, it's not going to add up for Penn State. So he was an impressive player. And as Isaiah West was one of the guys that won an MVP from St. Joe's Prep. So a lot of talent at that running back spot, a lot of talent at that linebacker spot, and unfortunately, it's a camp setting. And then we say that about school camps. We say that about these kind of camps, it's tough to evaluate those guys. So really good group all around, but unfortunately the strongest position, as Ryan said, is not at the top of Penn State's needs list. And yeah, it's kind of what you get sometimes.
Well, let's talk about this then. Let's shift to the receiver position. Stephen Light wants to talk about receivers. Regular show, donates to the channel here, and appreciate that. If you want to be like Stephen and you want to donate to the channel, you can always give a super chat. We'll talk about your question on air, and you get a shout out if you want it. Stephen says, thanks for all the great content. Not to derail the Baltimore story, but T. Frank's Jerry Hawkins article has me with googly eyes. So check that out, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Great time to mention, hey, subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. 6 months for $29.99, a better deal than you were getting before. So we just keep sweetening the pot. I don't know what you're waiting for if you haven't gone yet. That I did an advanced scouting, just looking at highlight film, giving my thoughts on Jerry Hawkins. Receivers at this camp. Penn State is in need of receivers in this class, 25, 26. They need all of them at all times. So what did you guys see from those guys that were assembled in Baltimore this weekend?
Well, the one thing I'll say,
I promise I'm going to actually ask one of you a specific question at some point today.
We're good,
Ryan.
So the one thing I'd like to say too with Jure is just like, remember 5'9", 160. He's small, and yeah. I think he's going to end up at Penn State. You know, depending on how things play out, I think there is a real chance he'll end up at Penn State. But they're just looking for bigger guys too. So that's you got to just keep that in mind there with him. You know, the receiver group. I thought Rico Scott looked pretty good. Of course, he's committed to Alabama. We'll see if Penn State's able to get him back on campus at some point. But if he wants to end up at Alabama, I don't know if visiting other schools is the smartest thing to do. So we'll see how that plays out. But I was impressed with Rico Scott, and I thought he moved really well. He certainly was one of the best guys there. The other receivers there are all kind of, I don't want to say plan B guys for Penn State, but again, we know. If you look at Penn State's wide receiver board, who has official visits set, you know, none of these guys are really in that category. I mean, Chance Wiggins, I knew he was big. I didn't know he was that big, Sean. You know, Elijah Moore, another guy that I thought at one point Penn State was in the mix with. Doesn't really feel like that's going to happen anymore. You know, one guy that kind of stood out to me is Thomas McCoy. He's a up and coming 2024 wide receiver. Penn State just offered a couple weeks ago. Sean, you and I were watching him through that gauntlet drill. I thought he, you know, moved really well. Yeah, that's McCoy there. Certainly a player to keep an eye on. I get the impression Penn State would love for him to come camp, you know, get some more testing times on him. At the same time, we'll see how he tested yesterday, right? Those, like I said, those times won't come out for a few more days, but Penn State has access to all this information. So he's a guy I think to keep an eye on out of Mount Zebedee in Maryland. Recent offer. Again, I think they really want him to camp, and then we'll see if things progress there. But a couple others. I mean, Jeff Exner was there. I thought Jeff Exner was going to be a D-end. I guess he's going to be a tight end or a wide receiver. I'm not exactly sure. But he's one of those McDonough guys where, you know, Penn State always has great ties to McDonough. I think there's a real chance that Jeff Exner ends up at Penn State at some point. One guy who really kind of stood out to me, Elias Cook from Harrisburg. I know Sean always says I'm being biased with the 7-on-717 guys, but Elias actually really impressed me. You know, as for a freshman too, I thought he really caught the ball well. I mean, there was some situations there where, you know, he was going up and over top of defensive backs and just moved better than I thought he would too. Again, because of his age more than, you know, any knock on him or anything. It's just a lot of younger guys there kind of struggle when they're going up against the best DBs, the best juniors and seniors in the area. But keep an eye on him. You know, Brandon Raymond was there out of St. Joseph's Prep, looks solid again. But a lot of these guys just don't feel like they're at the top of Penn State's board right now. So I don't. You know, I'm sure one or two of them was going to test really well, and Penn State's going to find out about it, and that, you know, may help them maybe line up an official visit or something like that here in June. But, you know, passing the eye test from what Sean and I have seen, you know, there was nobody yesterday that was like, oh yeah, this is something Penn State has to
help in the pack. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I was thinking that too. It was a good group, but like there wasn't anybody that crushed it. I'll go back to Thomas McCoy. Like, in terms of expectation, we didn't really know much about him going in. I knew that Penn State offered a couple weeks ago. His coach actually played with Marcus Hagens at Virginia, knows Dex really well. He was the smoothest that I saw, like gauntlet, running drills, catching the ball away from his body. Like there's something there. Like that kid can play. So I'm very curious to see where he fits in as an athlete. Not sure what straight line speed, shuttle, all that kind of stuff that he brings to the table. But like, it would not shock me for Thomas McCoy to move up that list a little bit. I don't know if he's going to go into the official visit realm. I bet with Ryan, I bet they would like to get him on campus to camp a little bit, to work with them, to see what he goes. Because I mean, we sometimes set the board and set it and forget it, and then we realize it's just the middle of May, or the beginning of middle of May, the 15th today. So there's still time for evaluation. There's still time for camps. There's still time for spring evaluation guys to pop up. And sometimes they do at camps like this. And McCoy, I think, is an example of a guy that could be somebody we're talking about in a month, somebody we're talking about in 2 months, or something like that. Because I thought just from watching him versus what I've seen in the past, we kind of stacked up well with some of the guys that they brought in Penn State.
So is this
T-Frank, real quick?
Sure.
Let me jump into one more thing real quick, just to kind of highlight what we're talking about. The MVP yesterday was a freshman, a 2026 kid, Davion Brown, from Trinity Episcopal in Richmond. You know, I'll be honest, I didn't watch him a whole lot because Penn State has offered him, but I'm watching 2025 guys more than 2026 guys, especially out of that group. We have some film and stuff, and I'll go back and watch that obviously here in a couple of days. But it's when a freshman is the one getting the MVP honor in these camps, that's not something you see very often. But he's certainly, I think, a player we need to keep an eye on, just from the fact that all of his coaches gave him that MVP honor. So keep an eye on him, Davion Brown, Trinity Episcopal out of Richmond.
So is this a position, speaking of camps, is this a position where when Penn State hosts their regional camps over the summer, bring in hundreds of players from all over the region, Fitz, is this a position you're still looking for guys in 2024? Because there's a lot of times, as Ryan just said, when you go to those camps, you're looking at 25. Okay, who are the names to know for the next batch? Because we kind of have a firm knowledge of all of the targets. Are you going to be still looking for and evaluating receivers in 24 for the summer period for Penn State?
Absolutely. And I will say Jonathan Paylor, who looks like he's going to go to South Carolina, was very good yesterday as well out of the slot. But I think it's absolutely an opportunity for somebody to earn an offer at camp. Probably going to take 4 receivers, Ryan? So in that ballpark.
If they can.
If they can. So that tells me there's space. They've got nobody right now. And there's an opportunity there. So I would be interested, especially in that first camp, the first camp of the summer, because you've got some guys that we're seeing scheduling official visits for the end of the month, or scheduling for, the second, third, and fourth week. And some of those guys may be still in school, but it's an opportunity to get them in maybe the beginning of the month to see if they're on that line, to see if they can make it work. And it's worked for some guys. It has not worked for others, but if you're on that line and you want to get to the other side of that line, that's the way to do it, is to get to camp. So I would not be shocked if they were, heavy on the evaluations, if we'll say, in terms of receiver, because they don't have anybody, and they've got the opportunity to take numbers in this class. So I think that really makes sense for guys like a guy like Thomas McCoy to come up. If you have an offer, you've got an offer, but you don't have an official visit set, you're kind of in that gray area between, are they serious about me or not? This is an opportunity for him to make them be serious about you, or just go the other direction. And we've seen that a bunch. We've seen guys that come to camp and like, oh, you're not as athletic as we thought we would, or you were. Excuse me, you're not as athletic as you thought you were. That's okay. Like, just go in a different direction. You've got the rest of June to take official visits to elsewhere. So I think that's kind of where we sit with evaluating the wide receiver position. There's some other guys. Chance Wiggins is really interesting because he is huge, absolutely huge. I don't know that he's tight end huge. He moves fairly well, but does he run well enough to be at Penn State? That's a good question. Very productive guy, great kid, a lot to like there as a total package, but might be another one of those kids that you try and get up at the beginning of June to run for you to see what you've got. Because I think if he had the opportunity to be at Penn State, that might be a kid that jumps on that opportunity. So we'll see what happens at that position. But absolutely, I think this summer they'll get a chance to look at some more guys.
It'll be interesting to see how that how that plays out. And we're going to jump into the trenches and talk about some defensive linemen and some offensive linemen in just 1 second. But before we do that, we are going to talk about today's sponsor, the sponsor of the BWI Live Recruiting Show. That is My Perfect Franchise. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Are you looking for a side hustle while working on your current job? Or do you want to diversify, build wealth, maybe leave a legacy? There are all different ways why you would want to join My Perfect Franchise. And here's the important thing. Do you know what to do with the assets you have right now to make them grow? That is to me, like when I was learning from this stuff from Andy Ludicky, the owner of My Perfect Franchise, that's super important. Like, you've worked so hard for the money you have right now. You want to make sure that you are growing it and not throwing it into a roulette wheel. And that's why My Perfect Franchise is here, to help you understand franchise ownership, understand you and how you fit into that world if that interests you. So check out My Perfect Franchise. Andy Ludicky is a consultant with extensive experience placing people like you with the perfect franchise to manage. His services are 100% free. He takes you through a very long vetting process. This is not a 5-minute interview where you just sit down and you chat for a little bit and then he throws a couple things at you. He gets to know you, your skill set, your expertise, your financial investment abilities, all those things to help place you with something that will succeed. Questions about business ownership, anything else, you can check out the Blue White Illustrated message board or email Andy at myperfectfranchise.net to get started today. Andy is a longtime message board member. He loves chatting about recruiting. He's a recruiting fanatic, so you can have a conversation with him about that, although I believe he's a Texas fan. So, you know, I guess Arch Manning is the top of his mind at the moment. But again, check out My Perfect Franchise at Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, or if you're watching on the YouTube channel,
I'll give him a hook. Yeah.
you can see all of his stuff over there. All right, so let's talk about defensive ends, guys. We have a question in the chat that I want to get to here from Xander. Did Ari Watford come to any camps? Was he there? And then from there, if not, Fitz, who stood out to you at the defensive end, defensive tackle position?
Ari was a no-show. There was some talk that he was there but not competing. I didn't see him personally.
His coach told me he came to do measurements but didn't work out. That's what his coach said. I never saw him though.
Yeah, so he does exist. He did visit Penn State a few weeks ago, but yeah, he was not working out. So we'll just check that one off the board. I like to take the easy ones where I know the answer to. So no Ari Watford this weekend.
Okay. So one guy, and this is purely I was not there, but somebody who I've been impressed with, and I thought was a great positional player for Penn State that surprised me, I think maybe in the wrong way here in this photo, is Xavier Gilliam, defensive tackle prospect for Penn State. Did he look as small in person, Ryan, as he does here in this photo? Because that's a bit surprising seeing him here, expecting him to be 270 at this point. And he looks very going the other way from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have him at 6'2", 260 on his profile. It certainly looked like he may have, lost a little bit of weight, maybe closer to 250 now. I thought Xavier Gilliam moved really well in individual drills. He worked out as a defensive end, and Penn State certainly looks at him more as an interior guy. And so I don't take a ton of O-line, D-line stock out of what we saw yesterday. I mean, he was fine rushing off the edge, but I mean, again, we're trying to see what he's like against guards and not tackles. So certainly I think from a weight perspective needs to get a little bit bigger if he wants to be an interior guy. But again, this is a position where Penn State's going to take a lot of guys, or they want to take a lot of guys. It's kind of like wide receiver. I could see 3-4 defensive tackles if they're able to get quality defensive tackles. So, when I look at, again, like just comparing him to DeAndre Cook yesterday, Cook has more of that size. I thought performed a little bit better than Gilliam too. So somebody that kind of moved up a little bit. I don't want to say Gilliam moved down. I just don't think I got a lot out of O-line, D-line, because again, he was working out more as a defensive end. But has official visits at the Penn State for, I believe it's that first weekend, if not the second, one of those two, and remains a guy that I think very well could end up at Penn State. But I was just hoping to get a little bit more out of that. I mean, the biggest takeaway, was his size, and it was smaller than what I thought he'd be. So, but certainly moved well. I thought from they do this one drill where you have like that hip bend, you go around the little hula hoop kind of thing. He was certainly one of the most impressive guys there, and that's good. That's great to see. But there's other drills too where it just was hard to take much away from if you're going to work out as a defensive end.
Yeah, just his frame, like, looking at the broadness of his shoulders and everything was just a little more compact than I was expecting based on what he looked like on film. Was there anybody on the other side where you mentioned Cook a little bit earlier, Fitz? Were there any other guys that stood out to you in terms of, okay, that's a guy that Penn State can target in their defensive tackle class, which right now they don't have any, so the board is wide open for them to anyone maybe kind of open your eyes from what you saw?
Yeah, I think Cook was the guy that you would circle in that he just looks he's got room to put that weight on. So that was good. And he did play on the interior, did a nice job on the interior. I put up a rep on my Twitter yesterday. It went pretty well for him on that one. There's a couple of guys there. I mean, Jasir Whittington was there. He's, a couple inches away from being a top prospect, but unfortunately that's like we talked about with the quarterbacks. You gotta mention it. Same with Emmett Laws. Herb Gray's an interesting one. I think Penn State offered him this winter, the defensive tackle from Maryland. Good looking kid. I probably not as fluid as Cook, but he's got that body to work with. So that was nice to see. It was a group, to be honest with you, it was a good group of defensive linemen. I expected more. I expected them to do better. The offensive line group I thought would get cooked. They did not. They actually held up pretty well. So I was more impressed with the offensive line. Bryce Jenkins, by the way, 2025 Bryce Jenkins from DC Friendship Collegiate, absolutely massive. I mean, that kid looks like that. It would not take long for him to adjust to an NFL locker room. I mean, he's 6'5", 295, 300. Huge hands, huge arms, huge. He's really big. I mean, he's got some work to do to grow into his body and to figure out that coordination. But if he does, man, he's got something working. Penn State was one of the first to offer him. They had him on campus for a visit a couple of, I believe it was in late March. But that's definitely one to file away. Bryce Jenkins in the 2025 class is absolutely massive and a really, really good looking prospect.
Are there tweener guys or defensive ends? I know we've been talking about guys that could play both positions at Penn State. It seems like they've had a couple more guys on that list. Do you think that this group provides any sort of flexibility in terms of that?
Not really.
No,
I wouldn't say so.
No.
There were some guys that we were watching. I mean, so Ryan had a pick in for Dom Nichols a while ago. And I thought I did, but apparently that was another time, another place. He was, I think Penn State has done a thorough evaluation on him, and I think he's going to end up elsewhere. We'll say that it was not a great showing there. Darian Mayo is an interesting one because he's originally from York. He plays a good counsel. I thought Penn State would be all over him. Great frame, a little stiff off the edge, but great frame to work with. But Penn State's really not in the mix there. I think there's a couple of guys like that. You look down further, Eric Mensah from Virginia, I thought was pretty decent at defensive tackle. But again, like Ryan said with receiver, there weren't many guys that really separated themselves from the group. Like I said, I expect a little bit more from this defensive line group. Brandon Davis Swain was there from Michigan. He was good, but he's not coming to Penn State. I think that's kind of what I think about that group coming out of it. It was just a little bit underwhelming. And when usually the defensive line has the most to gain at camps like this.
Full disclosure, I was running through some of the comments before that last question, so I threw a dead fish at you guys, and you did an excellent job with it, so I appreciate that.
T. Frank, let me jump in here real quick. I mean, the guys, the stars of the D end were the defensive ends. Zahir Mathis, okay. Cortez Harris, who, by the way, Penn State has not offered Cortez Harris yet. They're going to offer him. I feel like that. He's a 2025 prospect for DeMatha. He was the D-line MVP yesterday. Certainly grabbed my attention. I was looking, watching him perform. I'm like, man, Penn State hasn't offered a kid from DeMatha who's, performing pretty well. So we'll see if that changes. I mean, I expect Cortez Harris. He's all right. I mean, 1-3 has him at number 57 in the country right now. And the 1-300 is about to come out again too. And he's going to be a highly ranked guy. So that's an offer I would expect to come. And then Zahir Mathis, man, at Imhotep, I mean, absolutely, to me, he was the best guy there. He earned a future 50 invite. He's got everything. 6'5", 230, frame's great, moves great. I mean, this is right now he's at number 50, 60-ish range in the 1-300. Certainly, I think that's a fair rating, and I think he's a potential 5-star guy if he continues to develop. He was limited this year. I don't believe he played the full season. I thought there was an injury at one point during the season, so I don't know how much film's out there. I'd have to evaluate things more, but especially if he puts on a little more weight, more muscle. There's a lot to like about his frame. So to me, it was the defensive ends who stood out, which is why I had a hard time comparing Gilliam, because I'm comparing Gilliam to Zahir Mathis as a DN. Yeah. It just doesn't add up. So, but I thought the DN certainly stood out. And then again, just if you look at Penn State's defensive line board right now, and the official visits are bringing him, Nigel Smith from Texas. You had David Polly, of course, from PA. You got Benedict Ume in there. You got Xavier Porter. I mean, they're casting a very wide net, and a lot of these guys aren't really from this area. I mean, of course, Benedict Gume's from Toronto originally. Oh, you have Brian Robinson too. I guess he's at the end, but I still kind of think he's going to grow into a defensive, could be an interior guy, depending on how he wants to develop and if he wants to put on the weight. But yeah, I actually was really impressed with the offensive line group. I thought Kyle Altuner. The whole problem with Kyle is if he was 2 inches taller and maybe another 30 pounds, I think Kyle Altuner would Penn State be a guy Penn State's all over. They're really trying to get bigger in size wise, and Kyle doesn't really fit that. But fundamentally, moves really well. I was really impressed with him. How about Ryan Howerton, Sean, a guy who's visited before? Wouldn't be surprised if Penn State brings him back for a camp this year to keep an eye on. I mean, they definitely want another offensive tackle. The problem there too, though, is they got a bunch of offensive tackle visits lined up, and certainly want to lock one or two of those guys down before dipping into the pool of players we saw yesterday.
Are there any other standout players? We got to move on here in just a little bit, but I know there's some corners that, Ryan, you want to talk about quickly before we get to that. We Are Penn State Red says, love the show, best football and hoops coverage. Appreciate you. Thanks for the super chat. I always appreciate the donation to the channel. And then I don't know if this shows up well on YouTube going through the system we use, but C. Paul King gives us a donation and a super sticker, which is a little animated thing. So hopefully that shows up cool. Otherwise, okay. Thanks for the donation. King's always here. He's another regular on the show. So, Ryan, I know you wanted to talk about Fateem Delane as well.
He's a stud. I mean, he's a potential. I think he's a potential 5-star guy. And I know, right now he's rated 144. But I mean, I love Fateem Delane. Maybe 5 stars a little bit too much, but certainly a top 100 guy. He's a guy I really think is going to move up eventually here in the ratings. I mean, my whole thing is he's 6'1", 6'2" right now, 200. I mean, how does he continue to grow? Because every time I see Fateem Delane, he's jacked. He looks really good. Moved really well though too. I mean, could he grow into a safety or something like that? We'll see. Hakeem Satterwhite too is just a guy we've been talking about more and more. Was at St. Paul's last year, going to St. John's now. Penn State's already offered him. I mean, I will say he looked like a freshman out there at times, trying to cover guys who have been at these kind of settings way more than he has, but moves really well. He's going to be a player Penn State's all over. Keep an eye on him down the road as well. Who else do we have there? I thought Tyreek Hayer kind of struggled a little bit during one-on-ones, but I thought he was good during the individual drills. Tyreek's like a top 100 player, I believe, at cornerback. I forget Tyreek's school off the top of my head. I apologize, but it was a good group. I thought the wide receivers kind of got the best of the DBs from the group I saw. Sean, you were on the other side, so it was kind of hard to see. But look, with these camps, there's no rhythm between the wide receivers and the quarterbacks, right? So balls are just flying everywhere all the time. And I'm really just trying to watch the routes, right? I mean, just watch the routes and how they run them, and they beat the DB. Sometimes that's more important than whether they come down with the catch.
Fitz, were there any corner safeties that stood out to you?
Delane. I mean, he's very good. He might be a linebacker. He's I think he's good counsel's best prospect. And there's a lot of really good players at good counsel. Dylan Jones, again, I mentioned him earlier. I think that there's a lot to like there. Kenny Wooseley was there. He was the sole Penn State commit there. I only got to see a couple reps. He was on the other field with Ryan. So I didn't.
And he was great.
Yeah,
he was fine. Yeah. I mean, I thought he was fine. I'm not even sure how. Yeah, maybe I probably should. I'm sorry. So I'm looking at our spreadsheet here, right? And we have Penn State commits up here, and I'm looking at just the guys who weren't Penn State commits. So I'm reading that wrong. So Kenny, if you're watching here, I'm sorry I did not mention you, my friend. I apologize. But no, Kenny was fine. One thing I loved about Kenny, leader in every drill, right? Always the first guy, always the one being the example of the coaches, and I love seeing that, because that just shows leadership, shows, that you want to get after it. And I love the reps too, always getting in there, getting more reps, whether he gets beat, whether he doesn't, it doesn't really matter to me sometimes in these camps. It's just showing like you want to get better, and you're taking the coaching, those kind of things. I think that was really important. From the reps I saw, I think he took 6 reps. It was pretty even, won 3, lost 3. I'll go through it, and I'll try and get those clips up here in the coming days. But Kenny was fine. I mean, it's the same thing always with Kenny, right? Like, Kenny's a dog. He gets after it. If he was 2 inches taller, he'd be a top 200 prospect. I mean, I've said that a million times about Kenny. I'll continue to say that as well. But another guy, I'd love to see his testing numbers too. I didn't get to see those, but Kenny more than held his own in cornerback, wide receiver drills.
Well, I feel like I was there That was an awesome breakdown of the Under Armour camp. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on quickly to one news and note, and then we'll get into a preview of what's coming up. I want to make sure we get everything here before the end of the show. Beach Wine Guy asks this: what's your feeling on Penn State being able to pull Jamonte Waller from the South? Well, Jamonte Waller put out a top list of schools. Ryan, it was a top 10, I believe, right? And Penn State makes the list. So, guys, quickly, just tell me your opinions, your feelings on Penn State's position with Waller, and whether or not he's going to be that third linebacker in this group if they want to take 3 this year.
Well, I'm starting to think he's going to be more of a defensive end. We'll see. I'm just here. I got some people talking DN. I got some people talking linebacker. I know the size. I mean, we've been talking linebacker for a reason, right? The size doesn't add up, but I have 2 people over last week telling me they're going to start recruiting him as a defensive end. So we'll see. They're certainly using the whole Micah Parsons pitch, right? And how they used him for Jamonte Waller. But, got multiple official visits set up, right? Penn State is the 9th. I think Florida is the 16th. Georgia's the 23rd. No, I missed one there. Auburn for the 2nd. Got a bunch of other schools pushing for him, trying to get official visits in. You got LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M, I believe, a couple other schools in the mix there. But I mean, I think Penn State leads at the moment, but let's get through these official visits, man. He's going to Georgia, Florida, and Auburn, 3 schools that are going to be incredibly aggressive in multiple different ways. And oh, by the way, he's from down south as well. So Penn State's done a great job relationship wise. They're going to do a great job on their official visit. But talk to me June 25th, and I'll feel much more confident in where things stand.
Yeah, it's not quite time to plant that flag now for Waller, even though Penn State has done a phenomenal job recruiting him early. But, I agree with Ryan. I think they're in the lead. You take him. We're talking position here. You ask him which position he'd like to play. He'll tell you a position, and then you recruit him at that position. That's where you're at with a guy like Waller. He's so far out. I think he can play linebacker. I think he can play edge. That's kind of the direction you go with that. But I think Penn State's done a great job. And I buy – they're legitimately in this. Like you can talk yourself out of it. He's so far away. He's got these other visits, but I think Penn State's legitimately in this, and they've done such a good job recruiting him early that they kind of set the standard for the rest of the recruitment. Now it's about hanging on. Now it's about impressing him on his official visit. But Penn State, I probably more in this one than a lot of people from the South would give them credit for.
Penn State recently, looking at the way they run their defense, they run a lot of zone drops. So, you got a defensive end that has the mobility of a guy like Waller. I guess I can see it. Like if you want to make an argument for the fact that they would have room for a guy with the size and measurables of him, maybe he's more of that hybrid player at the position, and you can do more things and have a bit more of a scheme diverse situation with a player like that. So we'll see. It'll be fascinating to see, and we'll keep up to date on all of that. Right now, we got to get into stuff very quickly, previewing this next weekend and some quarterback information. Everyone loves quarterbacks. Here on Read and React, what we do is we take a story or a couple stories that the guys wrote in the previous week since the last show, give you a little bit of context, a little bit of detail, and then you can go check out the full article over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Today we're talking about Ethan Grunkmeyer because he visited Penn State this past weekend, and Ryan had a chance to catch up with him. Ryan, just a couple quick thoughts on Grunkmeyer and how you think that situation is unfolding for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think has to be the most likely. If Penn State's going to get 2 quarterbacks, right, and they've casted a net here with Tyler Cherry and Trevor Jackson, out of those 3, I think it's very likely that he ends up at Penn State. Where I'm just hesitant to say it's absolutely going to happen is that he continues to talk about wanting to visit Clemson. Clemson's one of those schools that doesn't just throw out offers. Like they want to get you on campus and then they'll offer. I think their total offer count still for the 2024 class is like 60 players or something like that. It's incredibly small. So if he does go and visit Clemson, if he does get an offer from Clemson and he loves Clemson, well, Clemson's a quality program that would have to be considered in the mix. But the good thing for Penn State is they should get him back on. I mean, he's coming for the Elite 11. I don't see any world where he comes all the way back to State College this weekend and doesn't hang out in the Lash building for a little bit. So it should be back-to-back visits for Penn State this weekend, and we'll see where things progress from there. But it feels likely. It feels like a situation where he should be probably committed some point in June, because if he's going to go to Clemson, it's going to be some point here in the coming weeks. But I just want to see if that offer does come, because he does continue to say that he wants to. And, in my 3 or 4 conversations with him, there's no reason for me to ever, think he's trying to throw me off or anything like that. He's a very, smart kid and well-spoken and all those things. He's not one to, I think, play with the media.
Fitz, what do you think of the situation, and do you have any feedback from the other side, maybe, of how the visit went and how they're getting to know each other a little bit better here in this quick sort of courting period?
I made this comparison on the board, but following quarterback recruiting and evaluation is like following a James Franklin assistant coach search. The circle is one, and there are people in the building that find out who Mike Yurcich likes when Mike Yurcich actually offers the kids. So that's Mike. Mike is very tight on that stuff, even with the people that work in that building. So I don't think that there's a ton coming out of it. I will say, just in terms of dominoes, Van Buren's off the board Saturday, likely Oregon. Cutter Boley's going to be off the board. He's a 25, but Penn State has been recruiting him as a 24 because of his age, kind of reclassified. And he was able to take official visits this summer, and Penn State was trying to get him on campus for an official. He cut his list to 10. I think he's going to announce fairly soon, and Kentucky looks like the favorite there, so you can kind of cross those guys off. Penn State has not been hot on Samaj Jones, so I think West Virginia makes sense there. So you're moving on to that trio that Ryan mentioned, and Penn State's still evaluating guys. Yurcich traveling, watching guys throw. The Elite 11 is something that they put stock into, not so much in the sense that just because you were at the Elite 11, you're going to get an offer, but this is a name farm. Like, this is getting guys, like, this is their ability to get their name out there. Penn State, go back, look at the tape, maybe go book a flight, go see the guy throw in person, and then all of a sudden you've got an offer. Trevor Jackson was an example of that. So they've got an opportunity to see more quarterbacks, and of course they're going to be in their backyard this week, so they're going to figure out a way to get those evaluations and continue to go. So that board has expanded while a couple of those top guys are coming off, and I'll argue that like evaluations are ongoing. Like we've been so familiar with Michael Van Buren and Samaj Jones and the guys that we have known for a long time that you kind of write off the new guys as plan B guys. It's not always necessarily the case. We're going to see how these guys stack up, especially this weekend. We see Grunkmeyer throw with other Division I prospects at the Elite 11. But like that, it's tough to close, just to pigeonhole these guys into one thing. Jackson Smolik was not on the radar at this time last year. Guys have picked up. Will Levis was not on the radar at this time during his recruitment. And, Penn State got him in camp and offered him in camp and, took a commitment right away. So this is not there's no deadline for when you have to have your evaluations done on quarterbacks. It's just going to continue to go. You missed on a couple guys. Kromenhoek that's the white whale, right, Ryan? That's the guy that they want, like,
for sure,
above everyone else. Like, and he's committed to Florida State. So you've got to pivot and go with that. See what else is out there to not only fit your evaluation, but also fit your program.
Yeah, I kind of described this on the message board earlier this week because I went in and I watched the film of these guys and I gave an early ranking just on the highlight film, not doing a deep dive, not really giving you the nuts and bolts, but just a first passing rank over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com of the guys that they offered in May. I ranked those guys 3-1, and I kind of came away from it thinking Penn State's going to be okay. Like, if they can get one of these guys, I think all these guys are good. And it's a little bit like the offensive tackle situation where the names that you're talking about, even if you don't get a Cutter Boley or you don't get a Michael Van Buren, if they get one of these three guys, I think they get a guy that has similar talent to the guys they've been chasing, maybe a little bit less of the extended time and reputation that you mentioned. But, I mean, especially Cherry and Grunkmeyer, these guys have live arms. These guys have strengths that are not just good, but kind of stand out. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to is seeing these guys throw in person this weekend and kind of getting a one-to-one comparison, seeing how they throw against each other. So, Fitz, coming back to you, to wrap up the show here, give us a preview of the Elite 11. What is coming out of this weekend? What should people expect to hear about when it comes to players that they see throw at camp and some of the stuff we'll be able to gather when we're there?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that when we get a list. The Elite 11 has not put that out yet, so it's so tough to preview what we're going to see. Okay. They'll bring in guys. I think, Ryan, you said that Luke Reynolds is coming down to catch passes, so they'll hopefully have some. I think they call it all 22 or something like that, where they bring in just more than quarterbacks for the weekend. So hopefully we get to see some guys that make the trip this weekend that'll catch passes and do things like that. So we'll see that. We'll see guys going through the typical Elite 11 drills. I mean, it's shorts and a t-shirt, but it's also data. It's a data point that you can go off of. And that's one other thing when Ryan and I are sitting here talking about camps and talking about, well, this guy wasn't great on Saturday or Sunday, and this guy, was really good. Like, that's just part of the evaluation. You can't come away from that saying that this guy sucks because he was not good on Sunday. You can't come away saying that. You have to go back and double check and triple check with the other stuff. And then if you come back and you're like, well, I mean, the original film, you're right, was not that great. The camp's not that great. Then you move in another direction. So yeah, I think it's just another part of that data in the evaluation, and we're going to go from there. Penn State will bring in guys. The camp is on Sunday. The Elite 11 camp is on Sunday, so it's an opportunity for them to get guys on campus on Saturday. That could be more than just quarterbacks. So stay tuned to the site. We will see what happens when that roster comes out. We will see what happens when we get a feel of who's actually going to be on campus, because it's going to be a fun weekend.
Another reason, as Fitz just said, we talked about it on the show, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated, bluewhiteillustrated.com. And when you do, let us know if you came from the YouTube show. Always helpful to know who's coming over from the conversation here to have the extended conversation over on the message board. Ryan, anything coming up this week that you want to preview for Blue White Illustrated recruiting?
Just recapping Under Armour next couple of days. We got interviews. Chris Cole will have an interview coming up. We have the on 300 top 25 is going to come out a little later today. We'll see some movement there with some guys. I'm still going through that list at the moment, so I got to check it all out myself. But that will come out here in a couple hours. Just really kind of getting. My big thing will be recap Under Armour next 2 days. Get to Wednesday, I got to figure out who's coming on campus, right, Sean? Because there's going to be guys coming Saturday, maybe even Friday, who are coming in for this camp. I didn't realize that the Elite 11 isn't really just quarterbacks and wide receivers this year. They're bringing more guys in from different positions. So just kind of figuring out who's all going to be here. It sounds like this could be a decent recruiting weekend. So I'm trying to figure that out. I know Malik Washington's coming up for the Elite 11. That was another guy, 2025 guy we were hoping to see yesterday. He was away on vacation. He's a 2025 quarterback that I think could realistically end up at Penn State. And then you got Grunkmeyer. Van Buren already did Elite 11. I think Samaj is coming up again. Like I said, not much is going on there. So it'll really be Grunkmeyer, Malik Washington. We'll get some other names there as well. And we'll see how things play out. So I'd love for Tyler Cherry to come out. I don't know if that's I don't think he's gone to Elite 11. I was trying to figure that out the other day. Because, T. Frank, when you're talking about that ranking you did, to me, I mean, just looking at the highlights, Tyler Cherry certainly grabbed my eyes with that offer the other week.
Spoiler alert, he might have been my number one player on that list.
Yeah.
So, again, you can check out why, though, at bluewhiteillustrated.com and get all that information. Guys, thank you for the show. I know, Ryan, you've got a bunch of stuff to get to, and all that stuff you just mentioned. A lot of that's coming out pretty soon, so we're going to get going and let Ryan get to work to get you all the information you need. Fitz, Ryan, thank you so much. That'll do it for the show today. Please, thousandth time. Anyway, many times. Subscribe to bluewhiteillustrated.com. We'll get you all that information, and we will talk to you on Wednesday when we might give you another preview of that. We'll talk about the Beaver Stadium. I believe we're going to have Nate Bauer on the show. It's going to be a whole menagerie of things we're talking about this week at Blue White Illustrated. So we'll talk to you then.